In private, I hear all the time, you start looking at $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 donations, there's a legitimate concern there. And I think that's demonstrated when you look at the record. You look at the court cases, you look at the testimony, legislators, whether they're state legislators, whether they're assembly members, you name it, it's in the record that corruption is a real, pervasive, toxic element that exists within all of these bodies. And I trust all of us to not be...
Representative McCabe?
Under Rule 26, he's impugning everybody in this room, everybody in this building, including all of the assemblies and everybody else. You can't do that. You're impugning the motives of the people.
Thank you, Representative McCabe.
Madam Speaker, if I might address that, I am not saying that anyone is going to be corrupted, and I'm not saying that anyone is going to be influenced, but I'm saying that Alaskans have a very real concern there, and I'm saying that the perception is there, and that legislators have talked about that corrupting influence. That does not mean that any member of this body is going to fall victim to that, and I am not accusing a single member of this body or any of those members who testified under oath in the courts that they fell victim to corruption, but they said that the risk was there, that the influence was there. And the court, the Supreme Court, has said that there is a legitimate interest in restricting free speech. One of our most core values as Americans is free speech, and the courts have said corruption is such a serious threat to our institution and to our work here as a legislature that we have the ability to restrict that core foundational element of America, free speech, to avoid corruption. It's that important that we address that. So I am sorry if anyone takes that as impugning their motives. That's not my intent at all, but I do want to express the serious threat that corruption poses to our legislature. With respect to unions, I know there's many concerns with respect to unions and independent expenditure groups and all the rest. I get that, and I think there's some legitimate concerns there, and I think we should work on those in other bills. But we don't take a bill that addresses unlimited contributions coming in from out of state and say, we can't pass it. We're not going to touch that because it's not perfect. It doesn't deal with everything that we want. When I go back to my district and I talk to my neighbors and they say, what did you do to stop unlimited contributions from coming into our state and into campaign coffers? Am I going to tell them, well, it didn't address independent expenditure groups, or, well, it didn't address parties or unions strongly enough? That's not going to cut it for my constituents. They're going to say, what did you do to stop those out-of-state donations? What are you going to do to stop those out-of-state contributions? I hear time and time again from members today, we support contribution limits. We support restricting out-of-state donations. We have a bill right here that does that. It does it for Alaskans so that we can all have faith in our institution, in the legislature, and make sure that we do have a legislature that truly represents our constituents here in Alaska. We should vote for this. It's the right thing to do. And again, there may be legitimate issues. We might be able to improve this bill. Let's pass this thing, get it into the other body, and work with our senators hand in hand to make something that's better. That's the legislative process. But again, are we going to go to our constituents and say, we got to that first step and it wasn't good enough. I'm not going to vote for it. I can't do that. I hope you all don't do that. We have an obligation here to address these concerns, these very real concerns from our constituents. We need to ensure that these elections are funded by Alaskans, that Alaskans are the ones determining who's representing them in Juneau, that we have self-determination. We've complained throughout this year and last about the courts interfering with our state. The courts have struck down our contribution limits. They've opened the floodgates. Are we not going to resist the courts, do something about it, fight back, stand up for ourselves, and put limits in place? Come on, are we just going to give everything up to the courts? We can't do that. And, I get the concerns from the representative from Tok. Some of us have really big districts. I'm lucky not to have one, and I get the concerns of those who have big ones. But you know what? We've had contribution limits of $500 for years, and people ran competitive campaigns. We saw elections turn. People were able to get the message out, and we've got new tools at our hands. This last year has shown us we can use Zoom and Teams and phone calls to organize, to get the message out, to get people to call in and weigh in. The process works, and this quadruples the limit to $2,000 or doubles it if on an annual basis. It doubles the limit. We should be able to run even more effective campaigns and still limit the toxic, corrosive element that's corruption. This is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. With respect to constitutionality, the court struck down our old limits because they weren't constitutional, and we've worked hard to address that. We've raised the limits, we've indexed them for inflation, we've made them per campaign, something the courts felt has a strong, reinforces our limits to make them more constitutional. And the district from Northern Matsu, I think he's confused that we passed an amendment that takes out the unconstitutional language that limited out-of-state donations to aggregate numbers. We took that out. It's not in here anymore. This bill will remove that unconstitutional language from statute. So, you know, there's a lot of concerns. I'll circle back to independent expenditures just briefly here. You know, this dark money element, and I think it was stated on the floor today that this bill would somehow allow dark money to continue coming in. I don't really get that. Ballot Measure 2 addressed the dark money. You know, there might be out-of-state money coming in through independent expenditures, but all of that has to be reported now, thankfully. We get to know who those donors are. We get to know where that source of that money is. And again, this bill might not be perfect, and there might be legitimate concerns out there, and we might be able to go further with this bill. But let's not stop it here tonight. Let's keep it going. Let's work with our senators to make this bill better. Let's all go back to our districts and say we made an effort to limit that out-of-state money and stand up for our state. So, you know, I hope that this addresses some of those concerns. I hope that we're going to do the right thing tonight, that we're going to stand up for Alaskans, make sure that we have fair and honest elections and that we don't have undue influence creeping in. You know, out-of-state money is a real concern. I know it's a concern for me. It's a concern to those I talk to. It's a concern to those in my district. And I just implore you all, please, let's do the right thing. Let's stop that out-of-state money and make sure that everyone has faith in our institutions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Will the clerk please lock the roll? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Will the clerk please announce the vote?
21 yeas, 18 nays.
With 21 yeas and 18 nays, Committee Substitute for House Bill 234 has passed the House.